Hello and welcome back to yet another edition of hrtech.sg's Tech Talks. We are happy to have Amit Patel, General Manager, Unit4 Prosoft, in our studios today. Amit has an extensive background of over 20 years in sales and sales leadership positions with technology services vendors, and has worked across London, Washington, Melbourne, and Singapore. He's now a key member of the Asia Pacific leadership team at Unit4. Thank you very much for joining in, Amit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. So the question that I would like to really start off with is, has the pandemic altered HR tech adoption practices across your clientele? Are you seeing any key trends in the workplace that will be a game changer for HR tech adoption?
Yeah, I mean, the main ones really, there's a few. I would say the pandemic has primarily brought about the acceleration of a number of organizations' strategy to migrate to cloud. Very difficult for organizations to keep in touch with their people, to be able to have them be able to access HR systems or tools. So even things like appraisal, that need to be cloud-based, right, for organizations to continue running them. So in our own organization, in the Unit4 Prosoft business, we've seen a huge uptake in the cloud migration space. And just a very small example of that, in the start of 2018, we had probably 20% of our customers that were SaaS, and the remaining were on-premise. We started this year with 60% SaaS and 40% on-premise, and our plan will be through a global strategy to become a cloud-only vendor. So by the start of 2022, we should only have about 5 or 10% of our customers remaining on-premise. And the pandemic has obviously accelerated that, and I think a number of organizations have adopted these tools much quicker than what they had initially planned to. So some of them probably waiting for their investments of their on-prem hardware to depreciate fully until they make this switch. But like I say, the pandemic has certainly forced some of the decisions in this.
That's quite interesting, and in fact, the pandemic has not just altered where we work. In fact, how we work, how we employ, hire, engage, reward, and also communicate with our employees. All these has been completely changed, and with the work from anywhere, anytime approach, definitely cloud migration seems to be the logical way forward for most enterprises.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it just enables people as well, right? If you're working remotely, to be more connected to work, and it's not just HR tools; it's tools across the organization. So, CRM we've known for a long time has always been, or primarily has been SaaS-based, because you have, commercial teams, sales teams on the ground. They need to access it from everywhere. But that also now is true for all different types of departments and divisions, that they need accessibility to tools, whether they are HR tools or whether they are procurement or purchasing tools. The accessibility now has become more important than at any point before.
Interesting. In fact, that's a great segue to the next question. So essentially, when companies are embarking on digital transformation, and a lot of small enterprises have made the first steps, right? Yeah. Wanted to understand from your perspective, what is the role of the human resource function in the digital transformation in the process?
In my view, it's absolutely critical, right? Because there's a number of things that come into play, right? So if you have any type of transformation, whether it's digital or not, and it's to do with your organization, it's a high probability that people are going to be central to that. And that could be as simple as change management. It could be as simple as adoption. And I think that HR were or had been in the past overlooked in some of these large transformation projects. And I believe now, given what we're seeing in our own customer base, HR is starting to become a lot more critical in the decision making of the types of tools that organizations adopt, why they adopt them, and why they will be central to strategy, right? And very, very simple is that you can make a change at the top, right? As a CEO or a CFO, you can make a change. However, you need that change to be or have adoption and buy-in, and that can only happen through change management. Communication, how does that happen? Who does the communication need to go to? And HR are the ones that can provide the critical insight into this and getting that communication out. So a lot of digital transformations really should, from in my view and what we're seeing, should have buy-in, or HR should certainly have a seat at the table to make sure that these decisions are aligned with the people strategy of the organisation as well. In our own organisation, we've gone through multiple change in the last sort of 18 months as well. And that's a centralisation change, because as we start to plan for the next phase of growth, we need to centralise some of the functions that we have. That would not have been possible without our senior HR leadership being part of that transformation change, because it affects multiple areas of the organisation, and it often then leads to unhappiness of people in the organisation where they don't feel they're communicated to. So in my view, very, very important to have HR at the table when these decisions or even planning is being made for large scale transformations.
Interesting, right? I mean, there was once a HBR article which said that the human resource teams were focusing on administrivia. Yeah. And we strongly believe that HR technology adoption will definitely get the HR teams get back the seat at the decision-making table, and is what you've just endorsed.
Yeah, so, and it's not new. I mean, it still exists in a lot of organizations where HR is seen, yes, you said administrative center. From my view, it's also seen as a cost center. Whereby, there's no ROI from HR. And if organizations are thinking that way, I think they're making a critical mistake at the moment, because the ROI, even in a simple thing like attrition, I don't think organizations are actually even calculating the actual true cost of attrition of their people, when actually they could redeploy some of the staff that are doing a lot of administrative work in HR by automating tasks through digitization, and redeploy those people to think about things like learning, development, succession planning. How do we keep people happy? How do we keep them engaged? And how do we keep them employed in our organization without the need for them to look elsewhere and leave the organization that they're part of now? Because that's what causes the problem, right? Attrition has a huge ripple effect on organizations. And I think, now we're starting to see that. And if you think about Singapore, small island, limited now to the talent that exists on the island, and that can be, the residents, the permanent residents, and whichever foreign talents are in the country at the moment. As soon as that's stopped, within organisations start to look at, where are my best people? Who are the A players? Who are the B players that can become A players? And it becomes a crucial part of the overall strategy, is how we not only engage our people to keep them happy in their roles, but how do we then progress these people? How do we have a succession plan? So I think all these things are all part of that, and that, I guess, is where organisations start to look at where HR provides an ROI. Right, it's in those costs that are obviously, or at most times, not seen by an organisation, but are very evident in front of them.
Perfect. In fact, while companies are definitely understanding the need for investing in HR technology, we do see that they hesitate to invest in HR tech. Singapore is really way ahead in terms of digital transformation, but when it comes to HR technology adoption, we're really lagging behind. Why do organizations hesitate to invest in HR?
Look, I think, the strategy needs to start. You need to have a plan. You need to look at your existing state and what should be your to-be state. There are, how do I put this nicely? There's a younger generation of HR leaders that are coming through that have a lot of ideas, but then can't get the buy-in from senior leadership, because it's, again, not seen as a critical part of the organizational strategy. My view is that organizations should look at small wins first. So things like appraisal can be rolled out very quickly, and they can bring value back to the organization very quickly as well. But the plan should be, it can't be that you can do everything all at once, right? The fundamental part of this is that Our advice as Unit4 is always start with your data. The data is the most critical part, right? It forms the foundation of everything else that you do. So having a core HR database, so it can actually, payroll is usually where it's linked to, because that's the cleanest data that any organization should have in their company. And then think about how you can build tools on top of that, and be that appraisal, be that learning, be that succession. So lots of different things that can be done, but it's important to try not to do everything all at once. And every organization is different. Maybe look at challenges that you face today that can be solved with, small wins that you can take along the way. And I think once you start to do that, senior leadership will start to see the benefits that they're getting, and you start to win more and more trust, and then start to ask for, additional budget, or ask for, more buy-in for additional things to help improve the organization. So fundamentally, start with your data. Don't try to do too much all at once. Have an overall plan and a to-be state, but then work on building blocks to do that, because, especially now in probably most organizations, if you go to the CFO or CEO and say, hey, I want to rip out our HR and put in, an all singing, all dancing system that does hire to retire, I think you'll be seeing the back of the door pretty quickly, right? So I think that have a plan to, to build things in slowly. The other thing that's interesting as well now is that, gone are the days when, organizations just want a one solution fits all, right? I think now we're seeing quite a lot of best of breed solutions in the market. And then I guess, integration to key systems becomes very important as well. So it's really worth, really doing research, talk to as many people as you can. My advice is to talk to multiple vendors, and also talk to your peers in other HR departments in different organizations. There's also a number of HR associations in Singapore. So SHRI is one. You have in manufacturing of the Singapore Manufacturers Association for HR. Take the time to talk to your peers about what they're doing, the challenges they face, and that way you can build a solid, a business case around the whole strategy.
Fantastic. That's a great input, Amit. In fact, what we encourage HR teams to also do is talk the business language, right? The business case that they present should just be focusing on employee sentiments, but talk about dollars and cents that will be saved, because the CEOs and CFOs that you talked about essentially understand dollars and cents. So HR has to talk the business language, is what we also keep telling them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, HR are not be all and know all as well. So, if you are unfamiliar with the business language, I'm sure, your CFO or finance director would be happy to share time with you. I asked them, and I'm sure that you can get that insight as well. Aside from that, there's a lot of tools, right, online. There's a lot of resources online that you can take this advice from. More than happy to also have a discussion with anyone if they want to understand more around business case and strategic planning for HR. I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Thank you for that, Amit. So when we specifically talk about Unit4, and someone who tracks the ERP segment and Unit4 closely knows that you've constantly been upgrading your products to make it very relevant for your organization. So with the new Prosoft version that's been launched, right? How does it help your clients in creating the best-in-class employee experience that everyone is now talking about?
Yeah, so actually, it's good that you said employee experience, right? Because that is the sort of core focus. So the Prosoft version 9 is cloud native. It's built in the cloud. It has a couple of very interesting things that we're working on. One is we are focusing on, of course, the employee experience. So years ago, HR tool would only be seen by, HR administrators, and it doesn't matter, if it was on a DOS system or, on an Excel, nobody else saw it, so it didn't matter. Usually you would fill out a sheet for your leave, you give it to HR, they fill it into any, legacy system that's being used. Now, of course, employees want more control over that, right? They want to be able to be sitting on a beach somewhere and apply for their next leave, right, whilst they're sitting on the beach. And for that, the employee needs to be able to have tools that are, that they relate to, that they're not going to get frustrated with. So one of the things with V9 is that actually the user interface is actually geared more towards the employee. Having said that, the back end, which Prosoft is actually known for, will remain, just as powerful, but just in the cloud. We're of course tidying up the UI for the administrative side as well, but the power of the back end, the configurability, by country for statutory, etc., will all be there. The shift of focus really now is focusing on the employee, because as I said before, when we talked about getting buy-in, a lot of the new deals that we're going into at the moment, a lot of the new contracts that we're signing with customers, no longer is just HR and finance making the decision. They're actually bringing groups of users into the discussions to see, the look and feel of the system, whether they like it, whether they think they can get on with it. So I think that that has resonated with us, and a lot of the focus on what we're doing now is to really modernize the interface while still maintaining the extremely strong back end that we have with Prosoft as well. So a lot happening. The other thing, I guess, is the ability to deliver new services through web services. So we currently are a technology that's not old. So the technology that we use in our current version is not old. And I'll give you an example, because we work across multiple countries. So if there was a statutory change in Indonesia, for example, we would then have to make that change in the system, but basically turn, it would have to be configured across the system. With web services, what we do, we have a core part of the system, and then for each of the countries, for example, statutory for Indonesia, you can make the change just in that component. So then it de-risks a lot of technical issues that could arise from it. And what that allows us to do is actually redeploy some of our deployment people into further R&D of how we further improve and enhance. So the product as is, you're not buying for today. My view is that you're buying for the next 10 or 15 years because of the way we've built the technology or built the application on the technology. That's the other thing as well, is that, what you see today, you should always talk to vendors about what the roadmap is, and vendors will always show you a roadmap, as do we. It doesn't mean everything's on there, but it at least shows that there's a solid plan, and that we also take feedback from customers in terms of improvement and enhancement as well. So I would say they're the sort of key areas of V9 that were very different to what we have today, is really focus on the employee and being able to rapidly deploy new features and functions for ever-changing market.
So it seems to be really feature laden, right? I mean, a lot of features. But if someone were to ask you, what's the unique selling proposition for the product, how would you define that?
Yeah, I would say the intuitiveness of the user interface is a key selling point. Like I said, employees now are they don't make the decision, but play probably a heavy influence in any decision making. So I'd say that's one of them. The other part of it is security. It's a huge question that we always get asked, right? Is the application secure on the cloud? So we use both AWS and V9 will use Azure. For AWS, I mean, we're ISO certified as a company, and AWS are ISO certified as well. We've taken an additional step with Azure, whereby we will have the SOC 2 compliance as well. So this is the absolute gold standard of IT security for cloud applications. It's used by financial services organizations, insurance companies, healthcare, who typically have very, very strict, internal protocols when it comes to using cloud applications. So I would say, the intuitiveness, security, and also the ability for us to make rapid changes that keep the solution relevant, and obviously gives it, future proofs the application as well. I would say are the key 3 or 4 areas that are exciting about V9.
Interesting. Definitely intuitive approach of the application, cybersecurity are very key elements. So when we look at the post-pandemic workplace, which we can start saying, right, how is the new application going to help the clients, especially the management teams and the HR teams? How is it going to help them in the new post-pandemic workplace?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, look, obviously, it's, split teams, or, team A, team B, half in the office, half not. Whatever way round you do it, you still need to pay people. You still need to, administer people's time and attendance. You still need to administer leave, and all of these things still need to go on, right? So business still needs to go on. Whether you need to come into the office to have to do that, or whether you can do that, from home or remotely, is kind of going to be normal for most people now going forward, right? So the application, being born in the cloud and being cloud native, I think is a key part of that. You can access it anywhere. A lot of mobility on there as well, so you don't actually have to sit at your laptop to approve a leave request or a claim. You could be, in theory, sitting in your garden or going for a walk, and it pops up, and you can pick up your mobile and do the approvals through there as well. So I think the absolute flexibility it gives people is key. It allows people to get on with day-to-day stuff as well, rather than having to physically log into an application on your laptop or on your desktop or whatever you use. Now it gives people the freedom to be able to do their work on the go, right? Or if using flexible time, or multi-shift, or whatever it is that you're doing. It just makes that much easier for everyone.
Thank you. That brings me to the next question, which is all about how do you encourage HR teams to be more data-driven and tech-savvy?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's an interesting one. I mean, first, when we ask HR for analytics, I mean, we obviously use our own tools, so we can find the data that we need. We often, it takes time, right? So if we want to find out, what is our attrition over the last 3 years compared to this year, that data takes a long time to find in the system. Usually it's done manually, and then we look at an Excel sheet. I think, again, right, it comes down to ROI of HR, right? Do they want to spend their time doing that, or do they want to spend less time doing administrative stuff and more on the the cooler stuff around retention, learning, etc. How do you drill that into a HR practitioner who's forever been used to doing manual stuff? Is quite difficult. I think it takes time, but I think also you can't just say, well, look, here's a system you could log into, and you could click these 3 buttons. It will show you your attrition for the last 3 years. I think it needs to be a longer story than that, right? It really needs for them to understand, what it is, why they should use it, what they can do with the the time that's freed up. I would say that in the last 18 months, the CEO or CFO has asked HR more questions than at any time, in the last 2 decades. Right? I think that everything around people planning, where people are, logistics around people, who can come into the office, who can't come into the office, a lot of things that HR have had to do, right? And I think that that's allowed HR to become, or at least be seen as a key part of an organization. So I think that, one of the things in terms of, it's all very well, buying tech. You can buy all the tech and all the gadgets in the world, right? But if you're not going to use them or adopt them to the fullest, then the money is wasted, right? So it really needs a lot of thought. You need to be able to, embrace the change that's coming. So a lot of organizations that we talk to, that sometimes we don't win any contracts with them, right? And the reason for that is that they have a system today. It does all, limited things, and they do the rest manually. They want to buy a new system from us, but they still want to do the same things that the old system does, and still do the things manually, right? So I think that is a big problem and a red flag for me, right? Because if you're not prepared to change, some of the processes, you're going to be stuck in this for as long as it takes for you to really think about what digitization means and how it can help your organization. I think also, people have a bit of a fear that, a machine, can't do all the stuff that we do manually. It probably can't do 100% of it, but if you can automate even 30, 40, 50% of it, that's a lot of time given back to people, right? And you can reinvest that time into more strategic, high-value activities that do bring, a return on, the time that you're spending back to the organization. So, you can't change the way people think, right? We can educate, and that's the way that we approach customers, is really having conversations around what the long term is, and how the benefit can positively impact them. So a lot of work to do, right? And we believe that there's still many countries companies that are still working in a very a very dated way. I'm not saying it's the wrong way. It's a very dated way of working, and there's a lot of new things in the market that's that should be considered by them.
I have two takeaways from that side. The first one being the data-driven decision-making approach really helps the HR teams get a seat back at the decision-making table.
Yeah.
Number two is the more they are data-driven, the more they are tech-savvy, right? They can have the machines do the tactical work while they can really focus on the strategic aspects, which again helps be seen them as a strategic business partner and help them get a seat back at the decision-making table.
Yep.
I hope you agree with those two takeaways from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we obviously have a manpower planning part of our system as well. That actually we've had more inquiries about that in the last 18 months than at any time previously. And that tells us that organizations are starting to take data of their people or people analytics very, very seriously. And it's not just about what's the median age group. It's not about what's the male to female ratio. It's a lot deeper than that, right? It's geographically, where are people, who rated what in their appraisal, lots and lots of different data, right? That can be taken from the system and used purposefully. And I'll give you an example. If you have, let's say you have somebody in, let's say sales, for example, he's your top sales rep, he leaves, and then you're left to whole, right? So what do? You look then, Singapore is the highest growth market, and then you look across your organization and you may have people in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in Hong Kong, wherever. Then you start to talk to recruitment companies, right? And you say, right, I want to replace this salesperson. Probably about a 6-month lead time from when you actually start the search to when that person starts their job, and then another 6 to 9 months of when they start to become productive. So you've already lost, 15 months, right? From when that salesperson has left. What organizations can do is look across the organization, right? Who have we got in other departments? Who have we got in other countries that can backfill the role for a short period of time, so that the impact of that particular individual leaving is not felt as heavily as him leaving and then you having to start from a standing point, right? To build that. So only data can give you that type of insight. Otherwise, in large organization, and when I say large, I'm talking even to the 500, 600 people, you can't possibly know every single person, right? HR can't possibly know everyone. So the analytics allows you to at least pinpoint a group of people, then you can deep dive into those as well. So it is important, very, very important.
In fact, the first point that you talked about, planning, is really critical, and I think it's really heartening to know that a lot of companies are embarking on that, because typically we say hire to retire as the HR function, right? But we've always been insisting it should be planned to retire, right? The planning function is really very critical, especially for medium and large enterprises, but that somehow gets missed out. And very happy that that Unit4 Prosoft can also bring in that functionality to the clients, which bridges a critical gap that exists.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. So which leads me to the final question for the show, Amit. Enterprises of all sizes are now embarking on the digital HR journey. So what is the piece of advice that you would tell them, right? They could be at various stages of the digital journey, right?
Yeah.
You could have a generic feedback or advice for all of them. And more specifically for companies that are looking to embark on the digital HR journey, what is it that you would like to share?
Yeah, look, I think and I think I said it before, right? One size doesn't fit all, right? So always have that in your mind. Think about integrations to different types of systems and if they can be seamless. Involve people from the organization. So, like I said earlier, companies are starting to involve users into, how they feel the organization or applications in the organization should look like or shouldn't look like. you know, and take the time, right, to assess what's in there. You know, a lot of organizations ask me, you know, what does our competitor use, right? But that doesn't matter what your competitor uses, right? Because you're a different person or a different organization. So I think that, you know, don't try to go specifically, you know, follow the river, right? So always stop and take a check on your own environment, your own objectives, and what you as a company are trying to achieve. Sometimes, you know, it can be as simple as, you know, we want to, you know, we want to consolidate, you know, the multiple systems that we have in our organization, and now we're going to take the time to basically digitalize most other areas as well. Some could be that they need a fundamental change because the way their business operates is very clunky. You know, you know, it's very slow moving. So digitalization will help them speed up and do things quicker. So I think the key is that, you know, don't go in, you know, thinking that, you know, one thing can solve all your problems. There's oftentimes that it's multiple different layers of things that can. Have a realistic plan in terms of, you know, the timeline, because it can't be that, you know, on Monday you wake up and by Friday, you know, you're through your transformation journey. That doesn't happen. Often they take years, right, to achieve and actually realize as well. So as well as you know, as much as I say, you know, we should speed up the you know, the time to go live. Sometimes it does take time, right? You have to do things properly. Otherwise, what you'll find is if you try to rush, you know, you'll get 6 months into the project and, you know, have to take, you know, 2 or 3 steps backwards to then move forwards again. And that, you know, adds time to that. So have a realistic time frame. You know, work with people who have done these types of integrations or digital transformations previously as well, who have got experience. And I think with those things, right, you know, there's, like I say, you know, there's lots and lots and lots of different resources available for free or for paid for. Talk to people, you know, your peers, talk to people in your organization who have been at other organizations to see what tools they use. So I think a lot of things that need to happen, but planning is the absolute key. And you can't plan alone, right? It needs multiple people in the plans, you know. So if you just say, hey, here's my plan, and then everyone has to follow it, I think you're going to get a lot more resistance. But making key people, including HR, including the users, part of that planning will make life a lot easier going forward in getting buy-in, getting budgets approved. I think makes for a much happier journey.
Gather relevant feedback from peers, you know, have realistic milestones, and then most importantly, one size doesn't fit all. In fact, when clients approach us saying that, hey, what is your feedback on this product? We tell them, right, take a step back. What is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Do not force fit the product into your organization. So one size doesn't definitely fit all. Thank you very much, Amit, for coming on hrtech.sg's Tech Talks. We really appreciate the time and effort. And we look forward to hosting you in future sessions too.
Great. Thank you very much, Sriram. Thanks for having us.